Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything you've been told about grief, the afterlife, and eternal connection isn't just comforting?
But engineered to keep you tethered to an illusion of continuity, masking the raw finality of death and your unmediated power over sorrow.
Okay, so let's unpack that. And I want to be very direct right out of the gate here.
It's a heavy topic.
It is.
Yeah.
Today we're looking at a target that is, well, it's usually protected by this really thick shield of social politeness, of, emotional fragility.
We're talking about the mediumship industry.
Exactly.
And I know we have listeners who might, feel a very personal connection to this, people who genuinely feel they've had a sign from a loved one. And we need to be clear. We're not here to mock the feeling of loss.
Not at all.
But we have to separate the feeling from the industry, the emotion from the machine.
That's the critical distinction. Let's just state it plainly.
Yeah.
We're not talking about ghosts today. We're not debating whether your grandmother is actually, watching you from the great beyond.
Or if she approves of your new curtains.
Right. We're talking about a global market, a market worth approximately $2 billion annually. We're talking about the machinery of what our source material calls the grief industrial complex.
That phrase alone, grief industrial complex, it immediately sets the tone, doesn't it? It implies a system, a factory line for processing sorrow.
It's a massive machine. And what's so fascinating and what we're diving into today is that we have a source document that it breaks down 28 specific core conceptual nodes.
It's basically a reverse-engineered blueprint of the entire industry.
It is. It doesn't just say, oh, it's all fake. It gives you a taxonomy. It's like looking at the schematics for a Las Vegas slot machine designed to keep you pulling the lever.
It maps the whole process from that very first moment you feel that pang of loss.
The seeker motivation, as they call it.
All the way to the end product. The reframed closure that guarantees you become a repeat customer.
It's a blueprint of a trap. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace the evolution of mediumship as it's described in these sources, specifically through the lens of what the text calls the John Edward model.
So we're looking at how it goes from just a personal, anecdote
to this pseudoscientific performance.
And finally lands on its ultimate form, which is the commodification of grief itself, turning a ritual into a product.
And the stakes here are incredibly high, because if you look at the high-threat nodes that our source material identifies, specifically nodes 1, 2, and 3, we're not just seeing people getting a bit of comfort.
No, it's much more dangerous than that.
We are seeing people getting trapped, locked in to what the source calls illusory loops of dependency. We're seeing the weaponization of love to prevent the human mind from doing what it's supposed to do, except finality.
So let's get into the gears of it. Section 1, the trap itself. The source calls these the axioms of enslavement, which starts with node 1. Seeker motivation.
Seeker motivation. It sounds so clinical, but let's just strip away the jargon for a second. What's actually happening on the ground?
Someone you love has died. That's the catalyst.
Right. And you are in an incredible amount of pain. And in our society, our modern society, we don't really know what to do with that pain anymore, do we?
We don't. We don't have the rituals. We don't wear black for a year. The community doesn't rally around you in the same way.
You get, 3 days of bereavement, leave from HR, and then you're expected to be back at your desk performing it 100%.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
And that creates a void, a huge gaping void. And this is what the source identifies as the economic entry point. This is where the industry sees an opportunity.
Break down that economic reality for us.
Well, ideally, grief is an internal process. It's messy, it's painful, it's deeply personal. But the industry reframes it. The bereaved individual is no longer a person in mourning.
They're a consumer.
They're a consumer with a very specific demand. The demand is for relief from that pain.
Yeah.
And the industry is right there with the supply.
And the supply is the medium. So node 1 identifies this core assumption that drives the whole transaction. The belief that you need external validation to resolve an internal void.
That is the trick. That's the whole ballgame right there. The pivot from internal to external.
What do you mean?
I mean, if I'm sad, I can process that sadness myself. I can cry, I can talk to friends, I can write, I can just sit with it. It's my process. But the industry whispers in your ear, no, that's not enough.
You can't do this alone.
Exactly. You don't just need to process the loss. You need to undo the loss. You need to fix it.
And to fix it, you need information. You need to know that they're okay. You need that confirmation that they still love you. And since you, the grieving person, can't just generate that information out of thin air.
You become dependent on a third-party vendor, a spiritual contractor.
You are literally paying for a service to tell you something you already know deep down, that you love them and they loved you.
It fosters this dependency on what the Source calls spiritual consumerism, and it sets up a very predictable cycle.
The axiom conclusion emotional lever cycle.
Right. So the axiom is, I am incomplete. I need a message from the other side to be whole. The conclusion is, therefore, I must buy a reading.
And the emotional lever is that little hit of relief you feel the moment you book the appointment.
It's the dopamine hit of the purchase. You've taken action. You've bought a solution. The grief lifts for a second.
But because you've outsourced the validation, you haven't actually built any internal resilience. You haven't learned to carry the weight of the loss.
You've just hired a porter for an hour to carry it for you, and when the hour is up, the weight is still there.
And of course, once they have you in the door, once that credit card is swiped, they hit you with Node 2, reframed closure.
Ah, yes. This, for me, is where the language virus really begins to replicate.
It's infuriating, this one, because closure is a word we all use. I just need closure. But what does that word actually mean in a dictionary?
It means closing something, shutting it, an ending.
Right. If you're going through a healthy grieving process or even a healthy breakup, closure implies a sense of finality, an acceptance, a goodbye.
You pack up the box, you close the door, you walk away. It hurts like hell, but it's done. There's a period at the end of the sentence.
But the mediumship industry cannot survive on the word done. If you're done, you stop paying. You're a terrible customer if you actually heal.
So they have to redefine the word. According to our source, they reframe closure not as an ending, but as an ongoing connection.
That is such a critical and brilliant piece of manipulation. They tell you true closure isn't saying goodbye, it's knowing they are never truly gone.
Or true healing is establishing a new, different kind of relationship with them across the veil.
Think about the genius of that business model. It's diabolical. If closure meant goodbye, you'd grieve, you'd heal, and you would never need to buy a ticket to one of their shows ever again.
But if closure means eternal bonds, if it means a continuous relationship, well, then you are never, ever done grieving.
You're just managing.
You are performing what the source calls perpetual emotional labor. And it explicitly links this to some models in the therapy industry. It's a business model that requires repeat customers.
Of course, if the relationship is ongoing, then the maintenance of that relationship is also ongoing. And since one party in this relationship is, dead.
The only way to maintain it is through the paid intermediary, the medium.
And this creates what the source calls the grief dependency loop, loop type 1. The mechanism is just ruthless. The axiom, the belief in continuity, eternalizes the relationship.
The conclusion connects you to the medium, the only one with the phone line.
And the lever guilts you into staying. Because if you stop paying for readings, are you abandoning your grandmother? Are you letting the relationship fall apart?
That's the hook. That's the real trap. If closure now means keeping in touch, then silence on your part feels like a betrayal.
If you stop going to the medium, you're not just saving a couple $100, you are actively hanging up the phone on your dead mother.
And that is a devastating psychological burden to place on someone who is already at their most vulnerable.
Which leads us directly into the biggest lie of all. The foundational lie. Node 3. Consciousness survival.
The core assertion. Eternal consciousness. The slogan you see everywhere. Love is indestructible.
It sounds so beautiful on a greeting card, doesn't it? It's exactly what we all want to believe. We want to believe that the things we value, love, personality, our memories, are somehow immune to the laws of physics.
Well, let's deconstruct it. The source calls this a default setting in the human mind to avoid what it terms materialist finality.
It's a clean, simple echo of religious eternities, but it's been stripped of all the dogma. You don't need the church, you don't need the rules.
You just need to believe that nothing ever actually ends, and you're left with this comforting sludge of continuity.
So the source lists this as a high threat node. Why? Is it really so bad to believe in an afterlife? People find comfort in it.
The source argues, yes, it is that bad. Because by refusing to accept that consciousness is a product of the brain and ends when the brain ends, you're refusing to accept the fundamental reality of the universe.
You're building your entire emotional house on a foundation of denial.
And when you're living in a state of denial, you become incredibly vulnerable to anyone who is selling a fantasy that confirms that denial. If you cannot accept the end, you will pay anyone who promises you a to be continued.
And the source suggests a pretty intense liberation counter to this, the existential void embrace, or Nietzsche nihilism.
Okay, I can just hear our listeners flinching at that. Nihilism sounds so bleak. It sounds like giving up, like nothing matters.
I know. Nihilism has had some terrible PR over the years. People hear it and they think, nothing matters, so let's just burn everything down.
But that's not what the source is getting at here. It's talking about something else. It's talking about sovereign detachment.
Break that down. What does that mean in this context?
It means that real freedom, true psychological freedom, is the ability to look at the darkness, the absolute final end of the self, and to say, yes, it will be over and I am still here now, and that is okay.
It's about facing the void without flinching.
And if you can do that, if you can truly accept the finality of death, the medium instantly loses all of their power over you. The entire $2 billion industry collapses into dust because you no longer need the product they're selling.
It's the difference between needing a nightlight your whole life
and learning to see in the dark. The medium sells you an endless supply of nightlights. The void embraces realizing the dark isn't actually going to eat you.
Exactly. But they know that facing the void is a tough sell. It's hard. So they have to dress up their product. They can't just come out and say, trust me, I hear voices.
No, they have to make it sound legitimate, scientific even.
Which brings us right to section 2, the machinery. This is all about bafflement and the performance of science.
And we're looking at node 10, empirical backing. This is fascinating to me because the modern medium doesn't look like the old cartoon fortune teller with a crystal ball and a turban.
No, they wear business casual. They have slick websites with professional headshots and an about page that lists their certifications.
And they absolutely love to cloak their anecdotes in the language of science. Our source specifically mentions the use of EEGs and silent sitters and laboratory conditions.
You see this all the time on those paranormal TV shows and Netflix documentaries, right? They'll hook the medium up to a brain scanner, the squiggly lines on the monitor go crazy.
And some guy in a lab coat looks at the camera and says, well, the activity is anomalous, we just can't explain this.
It's what the source calls the science veneer. It's performing the aesthetic of science without any of the actual rigor of science.
The deception here, it uses this assumption of parapsychology rigor to deter any real critique. If it looks like a lab and they're using big words, the average person forgets that it's just a cold read.
They think, well, scientists are studying it, so there must be something there.
But our source draws a really sharp contrast between Kantian positivism and Popperian falsifiability. Now, these are big philosophical ideas, so let's break them down simply.
Okay, ELI 5, this for us.
Simply put, positivism just says, I have collected data. It's about observation. Falsifiability, which comes from the philosopher of science, Karl Popper, says, for my claim to be scientific, there must be a way you can prove me wrong.
Right. So if I have a theory that says all swans are white, your job is to go out and look for a black swan. If you find one, my theory is kaput. It's falsified. That's what makes it a scientific claim.
Exactly. But the mediumship model is designed from the ground up so that it can never be proven wrong. It is unfalsifiable.
It's untestable chaos magic disguised as data. Let's just play this out. You're the skeptic, I'm the medium. You say, my grandfather's name was David.
Okay, my grandfather's name was David.
And I say, I'm not getting a D sound. I'm getting more of an M sound. Michael, Mark.
No, sorry, it's David.
Now, if I were a scientist, my hypothesis failed. I'm wrong. But because I'm a medium using this system, I have a dozen outs. I can say, oh, the energy is cloudy today, or the M must be a symbol for how much of a man he was.
Or maybe you're thinking of a Michael who's blocking David from coming through.
Exactly. I pivot. If I get a hit, it's proof that I'm psychic. If I get a miss, it's just an interpretation error or spiritual static. There is no possible scenario where the medium has to admit, you know what? There's no ghost here.
Which makes it, by definition, pseudoscience. It's a game that is rigged from the start. Heads I win, tails, we just flip again.
And to make the game even more confusing for the player, they use Node 13, sensory modalities. This is where all the jargon comes in.
Oh, the good stuff. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience.
They sound so official, so medical. I'm sorry, I'm experiencing a sudden bout of clairsentience. It sounds like something you need a prescription for.
But what is the actual function of these words? Why not just say, I'm getting a picture in my head, or I think I hear a name?
Because it's a bafflement tactic. It's designed to complicate very simple perceptions. If I say, I'm guessing a name, you're not going to pay me $500.
But if you say, I am receiving a clairaudient impression of a name with 2 syllables, suddenly you're a specialist. It elevates the guess into a technical diagnosis.
And it creates this incredible buffer against ever being definitively wrong. If I say, I see a blue bicycle, and your dad never owned a blue bicycle, I'm just wrong. End of story.
But if I say, I'm having a clairvoyant symbolic download of the color blue and a feeling of motion, well, that could be anything. A river, the sky, his favorite shirt, a car he once saw.
It completely overwhelms scrutiny. You can't argue with a vibrational frequency. It's like trying to have a debate with a cloud.
And if you do push back, what happens?
I'm sorry, you just aren't vibrationally attuned enough to understand the message. The blame gets shifted right back onto the customer. It's your fault you don't get it.
The liberation counter the source suggests here is to apply Skinnerian behaviorism versus Vedantic clairvoyance.
Which basically means ignore the fancy story. Ignore the jargon about how the medium claims they got the information. Look at the raw data.
B.F. Skinner was all about observable behavior, inputs and outputs. Don't tell me about your vibrations. Tell me something you couldn't possibly know.
Right. Did they give you the password to your dad's old laptop?
No.
Did they tell you where the missing will is hidden? Or did they just give you vague, comforting statements like, he loves you and he acknowledges the recent anniversary?
Real freedom here demands a complete rejection of the mystification. You have to strip away the fancy words, the performance, the scientific veneer, and look at the raw interaction for what it is.
You have to point out that the emperor's wearing no clothes.
And that raw interaction is often being steered by Node 15. The energetic perspective. This is a big one. This is the shift where they start telling you to make your life decisions based on rationality.
Oh, wait, no, the opposite.
The opposite, right. To move away from rationality and towards energy feel.
And this is where it stops being just a harmless parlor trick and starts to actively damage people's lives.
Because the source points out that mediums will very often encourage their clients to make huge life decisions, careers, relationships, financial investments, based on this vibrational guidance instead of logic or evidence.
Don't take that job offer. The energy feels off. You should break up with that person. Their aura is muddy.
This is what the source calls a command loop, and it directly benefits the industry by conditioning you to distrust your own brain.
If you stop thinking critically and start just feeling the vibes, you are so much easier to manipulate. You become a leaf in the wind, and the medium is the one holding the fan.
It completely infantilizes the client. It strips them of their own agency, and once you're in that state where you're trusting the vibe and ignoring the facts, that's when they can reach for the most powerful tools in their entire arsenal.
Which brings us to section 3, the emotional levers. This is where, honestly, it gets really cruel. We were looking at nodes 6, 26, and 27.
Let's start with node 6, grief projection. The source describes this as the core machinery of guilt.
So when a sitter, a client, first sits down for a reading, what are they feeling? Describe that state.
They're a wreck. They're completely undone. They probably haven't slept properly in weeks. They're replaying the last moments of their loved one's life over and over.
Did I say the right thing? Was she in pain? Is he mad at me that I didn't get to the hospital in time? It's a storm of guilt and anxiety.
That is the raw material the medium has to work with. It's a psychological play. The sitter is projecting all of that pain and anxiety onto the deceased. Is mom cold? Is mom lonely? Is mom scared?
And the medium steps right into that projection and acts as the solution. They say, no, mom is fine. Mom is in the light. Mom loves you, and she's at peace.
It leverages your own guilt against you. You feel guilty that you were alive and they are dead. You feel guilty about that last fight you had before the accident. The medium offers you absolution for a fee. She forgives you.
But notice what is actually happening there. It's a pathos trigger. The source calls this false empathy or a demiurge mirror.
You are projecting your own internal emotional state onto a completely blank screen, and the medium is just narrating a movie back to you that they know will make you feel better.
It's emotional heroin. It must feel absolutely amazing in that moment. The tears flow, that massive weight of guilt lifts off your shoulders.
But it's not real. The forgiveness isn't actually coming from mom. It's coming from a total stranger you just paid $200 to. It's a transaction.
And the source's liberation counter is Freudian projection versus Zen non-attachment. What does that mean?
It means you have to do the hard work of realizing that the anxiety you feel about the dead is yours. It belongs to you. It is not coming from them. They are gone. The feelings are here with you.
That is a very, very hard pill to swallow. To really internalize that and say, this pain is my own.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering. Because if the pain is yours, You can actually work through it. You can heal it. If the pain is theirs, coming from another dimension, you are totally helpless until a medium agrees to fix it for you.
And if the guilt about a human relative doesn't quite hook you, they bring out the really big guns. Node 26, pet dynamics.
Ah, the pet paradox. I found this part of the source material just darkly hilarious. Why do mediums love bringing up dead pets?
Because you can't have a complicated, messy relationship with a golden retriever.
Exactly. It evokes pure, unconditional love. With a parent or a sibling or spouse, there's always baggage. There are arguments, resentments, nuance. Maybe if you're being honest, you didn't even like your uncle that much.
But with a pet, it's just pure, distilled affection and happy memories.
So it's a calculated emotional lever. It intensifies the grief, but it also completely bypasses your skepticism because, honestly, who wants to doubt that their beloved dog Fido is waiting for them?
You want to believe that Fido is happy and chasing squirrels in the great beyond. It's a belief with zero emotional downside.
It exploits nostalgia to solidify the bond with the medium. If the medium says, I'm seeing a small, fluffy white dog with one floppy ear, and you had a dog like that 20 years ago, you are done. You're sold.
Your critical mind just shuts off because your heart desperately wants the dog to be there. And notice, the dog never has a profound message.
No, the dog is never like, tell my master to diversify his portfolio. It's just there. It's an emotional anchor to keep you in the room and soften you up for the main event.
And all of this ties directly into the final emotional lever, Node 27, the grief-love duality.
You hear this phrase constantly, grief is the price we pay for love, or grief is just love with nowhere to go.
It sounds so poetic, so profound. It's the kind of thing you'd see on a sympathy card or a Pinterest board with a sunset background.
But the source identifies this as a conclusion entrapment. It sounds beautiful, but it's a trap. It idealizes the pain cycle.
How to do that?
It flips grief into an expression of love in order to keep you cycling through the emotions. The implicit threat in that statement is devastatingly effective.
And the threat is, if you stop grieving, you stop loving.
Precisely. If you let go of the pain, you are letting go of the person. You are being disloyal to their memory.
That is a terrifying thought for someone who's already grieving. It binds the pain directly to the love. So to prove how much you love them, you must remain in a state of pain.
And to manage that state of pain, who do you need?
The medium. It's a ransom note. Keep hurting, or it proves you didn't really love them in the first place.
The liberation counter in the source is powerful, though. It contrasts Sartrean anguish, the idea that anxiety is the price of total freedom, with Hindu Bhakti, which is a form of devotion through loss. And it says real clarity comes from severing the tie.
That sounds harsh, severing the tie.
It does, but it doesn't mean severing the love or the memory. It means severing the unhealthy attachment to the pain. It means realizing you can love someone with all your heart and still let them go completely.
You can grieve unscripted. You don't need the pain to act as proof of the love. You can hold the memory without letting the anchor drag you to the bottom of the ocean.
But the system is smart. It anticipates that you might start to figure this out. It anticipates resistance from people like us. So it has built-in defenses.
Which brings us to Section 4, the defense mechanisms, how the con protects itself. We're looking at nodes 7, 8, 11, and 17.
The system has its own immune response. It knows skeptics exist, so it vaccinates the believers against any critical thought before it can take root.
And it does this by carefully distinguishing between skepticism and cynicism.
Right. You'll hear them say all the time, oh, I love skeptics. I was a skeptic myself. But then in the next breath, they'll demonize cynicism.
This is covered in Node 7 and Node 11. The entire strategy is to redefine the terms to their benefit. If you ask open-ended questions and seem willing to believe you're a healthy skeptic, that's Node 7.
But the moment you demand hard data, or you point out the cold reading techniques, or you attack the core methodology, suddenly you're not a skeptic anymore.
Now you're a cynic. That's Node 11.
And what happens if you're labeled a cynic?
Your cynicism is framed as a spiritual blockage. You are blocking the energy with your negativity. The spirits can't get through your wall of doubt.
It's perfect, flawless gaslighting. I can't perform my magic for you because you don't believe in my magic enough. It's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card.
It's the Emperor's new clothes defense. Only the truly wise can see the magnificent cloth. If you can't see the ghost, it's not because the ghost isn't there, it's because you are spiritually stunted.
It completely polarizes the discourse and protects their claims by suppressing any kind of rigorous debunking. They only want the kind of skepticism that's really just a believer waiting to be convinced.
And to reinforce this defense, they use Note 8, the origin story. If you notice this, every single popular medium has almost the exact same hero's journey.
It's a template. I was a complete skeptic, just like you. Maybe I was a construction worker or a stockbroker, but then when I was 15, I saw my dead grandfather standing at the foot of my bed.
Or, I had a near-death experience after a car crash, and when I came back, I had the sight.
I didn't want this gift. It was a burden. It was thrust upon me. I just wanted to be a normal kid playing baseball.
So why is that narrative so important? Why do they all use it?
Because personal experience always trumps claims of bias. It mythologizes their conversion. It invites you, the listener, to identify with them. I was just like you. I didn't believe either, but then I saw the undeniable proof.
It's a preemptive strike against skepticism. It disarms you. It says, I am not a predator trying to sell you something. I am a reluctant prophet sharing a great truth.
And then to really cement their status as the real deal, they used Node 17, fraud indicators. They spend a surprising amount of time talking about other psychics who are frauds.
This is the fake gatekeeper tactic. They'll give you a list of red flags to watch out for with other practitioners.
Watch out for any psychic who tries to sell you a curse removal. Be wary of anyone who charges thousands of dollars. Stay away from anyone who tells you who to vote for.
By pointing out all the obvious frauds over there, they self-validate as the authentic, ethical practitioner right here.
The logic is, I'm telling you about all the scams, so obviously I can't be a scammer myself. A scammer would never warn you about other scammers.
It's brilliant misdirection. It's a massive trust-building exercise. And they combine this with Node 20, which is about reading necessity. This is the soft sell.
You'll hear them say it, you don't need a reading from me to connect with your loved ones. You can do it yourself. Just talk to them in the car on your way to work.
Okay, now we have to go deeper. Beyond the psychological tricks and into the metaphysical framework they build. Section 5, the metaphysical prison. This is about realm control.
And the source breaks down nodes 22, 23, and 24 here. This is the architecture of the belief system.
Let's start with Node 23, the afterlife analogy. The modern medium loves to use technology metaphors to explain the spirit world. The most common one is that the afterlife is like the internet.
Or the cloud. It's a non-physical dimension that's accessible as an overlay on our own reality. And it's brilliant marketing because we all intuitively understand the internet.
Right. We know that just because you close your laptop, the internet doesn't vanish. It's still there, buzzing in the airways and the satellites.
So the critique here is that this analogy cleverly obscures the non-falsifiability of their claims. You can't prove the internet doesn't exist just because your Wi-Fi is down. And they use that same logic to defend the spirit world.
The spirits are there, your receiver is just broken, or you don't have the right password, which is belief.
It modernizes the ancient realms. It takes ghosts out of the spooky haunted castle and puts them into the clean, sterile server room. It makes the afterlife sound plausible, technologically plausible.
And then they start complicating the nature of the soul itself. It says Node 22, the reincarnation model.
Yeah.
Specifically, the idea of a partial incarnation from an oversoul.
This one always gets me. The idea that you, the individual person, are just a small fragment of a much larger consciousness. A single wave in a great ocean.
How is this a trap?
It complicates the basic fear of oblivion. It offers a kind of cosmic loophole. It suggests a fragmented consciousness. So even if you, this specific personality with these specific memories, die and disappear.
The oversoul continues. The larger entity you're a part of goes on. The source calls this a realm trap. It masks what might be an endless cycle of incarnation traps as a loving return to the whole.
You aren't being recycled against your will. You are rejoining the source. It sounds much nicer.
And the source brings in some really heavy esoteric deconstruction here. It mentions Gnostic archon exposure. Can you break that down for us?
So, Gnosticism was an ancient and very rebellious philosophy that argued that the material world we live in is actually a prison. It wasn't created by a good, loving God, but by a lesser, flawed, and often malevolent deity called the demiurge.
And the Gnostics believe this demiurge and his agents, the archons, try to trap souls in the material world through reincarnation.
Exactly. So the source is drawing a powerful parallel here. It's suggesting that this whole New Age setup, the reincarnation, the oversoul, the lessons we're supposedly here to learn, is itself a sophisticated control system.
So in this model, the medium is basically an unwitting agent of the matrix.
In a metaphorical sense, yes, they're keeping you plugged in, keeping you worried about your soul lessons and your karmic debt, so that you don't notice the bars on the cell window.
The goal then shouldn't be reconnection or leveling up your soul,
The goal should be to reject the demiurge, to break out of the cycle entirely.
which leads to the ultimate control mechanism of this metaphysical prison. Node 24, the motivational binary. Fear versus love.
The dogma. The core, unshakable dogma is that there are only two motivating forces in the entire universe. You are either acting out of love, or you are acting out of fear. There is no third option.
And this framework moralizes all of your choices in a way that benefits them. If you walk away from the medium, if you question the narrative, if you embrace skepticism, they have a label for that.
That's fear. You are afraid of the truth. You are afraid of real connection. You're letting your fear block you from love.
And if you stay, if you pay the money, if you attend the seminars, if you believe everything you're told,
Then you are choosing love.
it forces you into this impossible corner. No one wants to be the person who chooses fear. We all want to be the hero of our own story, the one who chooses love.
But the liberation counter here is pure Nietzschean will to power.
Meaning that real agency exists beyond that childish binary. It's far more nuanced.
It means you can reject the medium not out of fear, but out of power, out of clarity, out of a radical refusal to be manipulated.
You can say no to the ghost story because you are strong enough to live in the real world. You are choosing truth, even if it's cold and hard, over a comforting lie, even if it feels warm and fuzzy.
Okay, this is where we need to strike back. The source doesn't just deconstruct, it provides a list of deconstruction exposures. 12 targeted strikes designed to shatter the entire illusion.
Let's do this. Let's run through a few of these rapid fire. I want to hit these hard. Section 6, Strike 1, Grief Reframing.
The pitch is, it's not an ending, it's a new kind of relationship. The exposure is, this is just Victorian spiritualism repackaged for the Instagram age.
And the freedom. Deny the intermediaries. You do not need a broker for your own emotions, period.
Strike 2, consciousness is common sense.
The pitch. Of course consciousness is fundamental, it's obvious. The exposure. They conveniently suppress or ignore decades of neuroscience, evidence that demonstrates the brain is the seat of the self.
When the brain dies, the self ends. The freedom. Seize the finite now. If this is all you get, then this moment, right here, matters infinitely more than any promise of a sequel.
Strike 5. Energy transcends distance.
The pitch. Of course I can read you accurately over the phone because energy and love aren't limited by distance.
The exposure. This is just medieval ether theory, the idea of a mystical substance filling all of space, recycled and fused with tech speak. It's a business model that allows them to scale globally without ever leaving their house.
The freedom. Anchor yourself in the tangible. The person is gone. The memory is here, inside you. The phone line is just a phone line.
Let's do one more. Strike 12. Memory rituals.
The pitch. You should build a shrine, keep their room exactly as it was, talk to their picture every single day.
The exposure. This is a form of emotional and historical revisionism. It's designed to keep the wound perpetually fresh so that you keep needing the salve they're selling.
The freedom. Burn the archive. Reinvent the unbound self. You are not the curator of a museum of the dead. You are the living, and you have a right to move forward.
Which brings us to the final, critical question, the alternative. Section 7. The path to sovereign detachment. If we reject the medium and the reframed closure and the eternal bond, what is left?
Cognitive Armageddon. That's the dramatic term the source uses. It sounds destructive, but it's meant to be a creative act.
It's about dismantling the internal hierarchies that tell you that you need an expert to understand your own heart. It's about birthing what the source calls anarchist grief models.
We have to break that grief dependency loop, that vicious cycle of node 3 feeding node 2 feeding node 6. And the only way to truly break it is with the existential void embrace.
It still sounds scary, embracing the void. But think about what it really means. The central deception of this whole industry is that grief demands spiritual intermediaries.
That you are too weak to grieve alone. That you are too small to handle the bigness of death without a guide.
And the source calls for a torch myths approach.
Yeah.
You ignite an inferno of discernment. You reclaim unmediated reality as your own.
We don't need to escape to some other realm. We don't need to pretend that grandma is now living on the spiritual internet. We need to own the silence.
We need to stand in the face of absolute finality and say, I accept this. That is the definition of radical autonomy.
It is a difference between being a child who needs a comforting bedtime story to fall asleep And being an adult who is strong enough to face the night on their own terms.
The medium sells the bedtime story. It's warm, it's comforting, but it keeps you a child forever.
The void offers the cold, hard, silent truth, but it makes you free.
And that, at the end of the day, is the choice. Do you want to be comforted or do you want to be free?
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. Now that we've exposed the central deception, that grief demands spiritual intermediaries and eternal bonds to heal, what is the one comforting story about death, loss, or the afterlife you've clung to that you're finally ready to interrogate, dismantle, or burn entirely for the sake of your own sovereign clarity?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative, deconstruct the dogma, see the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical. Thank you for joining us.